I woke up bald the day before my sister's wedding and realized my own mother had cut my hair while I slept so I wouldn't outshine her. She called it justice, and my dad just laughed, saying, "Now maybe someone will finally pity you." I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just stared at them in silence. They thought they had humiliated me beyond repair. But what they didn't realize was that I had already decided exactly how this would end. And by the time the wedding began, everything was about to turn on them. My name is Melanie Williams, and at 26 years old, I have finally learned that the people who are supposed to protect you can be the ones who hurt you the deepest. I used to believe my sister Ashley and I were an unbreakable team, a bond forged in childhood that would last forever. As her maid of honor, I poured my heart and soul into every detail of her wedding, spending months ensuring her day would be nothing short of perfect. But 2 nights before the ceremony, the unthinkable happened. I woke up from a deep, medicated sleep feeling a strange lightness around my head, and when I reached up, my hands met jagged, empty air. My parents were standing in the doorway of my bedroom, the cold steel of scissors glinting in their hands, calmly telling me they had destroyed my hair for the sake of Ashley's special day. Before that night, my hair was my defining feature. It was a rich, auburn curtain that flowed all the way down to my waist, thick and shimmering with a natural health I had spent years maintaining. It wasn't just vanity. I had been growing it since middle school, treating it with regular trims and deep conditioning as if it were a living part of my history. Total strangers would stop me on the street just to ask if the color was real or to touch the texture. To me, it was a piece of my identity, a constant in a life that was often changing. To my family, however, it was a threat. From the outside, the Williams family looked like the gold standard of suburban perfection. My mother, Diana, was a 52-year-old high school counselor who spent her days offering empathy and a shoulder to cry on for her students. My father, Robert, was 54, the successful owner of an insurance agency and a beloved Little League coach. We were the family everyone envied. Then there was Ashley, 3 years my senior, the outspoken and vibrant older sister. Growing up, we were inseparable. We shared a bedroom filled with the scent of lavender and the soft glow of a flashlight as we stayed up late into the night. We whispered secrets between our twin beds, making shadow puppets on the walls and planning out our dream lives, promising to always protect each other from the monsters under the bed. The cracks began to show when our shared love of beauty pageants turned from a hobby into a source of friction. It started when Ashley was 8 and I was 5. I had begged to join the younger division because I couldn't bear to be apart from her. We spent our weekends traveling across the state, collecting satin ribbons and tiny trophies that we displayed proudly on our shared bookshelf. But the atmosphere shifted when I turned 13. I won the Junior Miss Sunshine State title, a crown Ashley had chased twice without even placing. On stage, she hugged me, but I felt the stiffness in her arms. Her smile was a mask, and her congratulations sounded hollow, like echoes in a cave. That night, for the first time, she didn't want to recount the day's events. She simply turned off her lamp and stared at the wall until morning. From that moment on, a subtle, toxic competition began to thread through our relationship. Ashley started to measure her worth by my shadow. If I earned an A on a difficult exam, she would immediately point out that she had received an A+ on that same test years prior. When boys started asking me to dances, she would casually mention that they had approached her first the year before. She was older, yet she seemed haunted by the idea of being eclipsed by her younger sister. I saw it in the way her jaw would tighten whenever a relative complimented my grades or my appearance. To keep the peace, I started shrinking myself. I even turned down an opportunity to skip a grade in school because I didn't want to graduate in the same year as her and risk stealing her moment. College only made the distance between us more apparent. I was fortunate enough to receive a partial scholarship to study interior design at a prestigious university, while Ashley struggled, changing her major 3 times before eventually graduating with a communications degree from a state college. By the time I walked across the stage, I had already landed a coveted internship at Crawford and Mitchell, one of the top design firms in the city. Within 2 years, I was a full-fledged designer with my own roster of high-end clients. Ashley, meanwhile, drifted through entry-level jobs, never managing to stay in one place for more than 8 months. Her personal life was just as volatile, marked by intense, whirlwind romances that inevitably ended in dramatic breakups. Each time she fell apart, she would retreat to our parents' couch for weeks. My mother and father would hover over her, whispering reassurances that the right man and the perfect job were just around the corner, always careful to shield her from any sense of failure. This pattern was so ingrained that when Ashley started dating Trevor Kennedy, I braced myself for the fallout. Trevor was 32, a handsome financial analyst with dark hair and striking blue eyes. We had actually met first. I had designed his company's executive offices, and we saw each other again at a client appreciation event. We spent nearly an hour talking about the architectural choices I'd made for his building, and he seemed genuinely interested in my work. But then Ashley swooped in with a forced brightness, interrupting our conversation to introduce herself. I stepped away to give them space, and by the end of the night, they were exchanging numbers. Their relationship moved at lightning speed. Within 6 months, Ashley was at family dinner, waving a princess-cut diamond ring in my face. I was happy for her, truly. Trevor seemed like a stable, kind man who could give her the security she lacked. Yet, even in her triumph, I saw her watching me. She was looking for a sign of envy, as if my jealousy would be the only thing that made the ring real. She pointedly remarked that Trevor could have asked anyone, but he chose her. My mother squeezed her hand, cooing about how special she was. My parents had always been this way, perpetually trying to balance an invisible scale. If I won an award, Dad would buy Ashley an expensive gift. If I had a breakthrough at work, Mom would plan a special weekend getaway just for her. They weren't just being supportive, they were trying to compensate for my existence. When Ashley asked me to be her maid of honor, I was moved. I hoped that this would be the turning point where we could find our way back to the closeness we had as children. I threw myself into the role with everything I had. I spent my weekends crafting hand-painted wine bottle centerpieces, designing watercolor place cards, and hand-lettering over 100 invitations because she didn't like the professional samples. I worked until 2 in the morning, my fingers cramping, all while managing my own demanding career and neglecting my boyfriend, Eric. I ignored the warning signs, like the way Ashley would laugh and tell me not to outshine the bride, or the way Mom would nod solemnly in the background. The tension reached a boiling point during a bridesmaid dress fitting. I stepped out of the dressing room in a simple, elegant gown that happened to suit me perfectly. The boutique owner gasped, commenting on how well the color complemented my hair. Ashley didn't see a sister, she saw a rival. She burst into tears, sobbing that everyone would look at me instead of her on her wedding day. My mother immediately jumped to her defense, telling me I needed to find something less flattering. I ended up in a boxy, high-necked dress that made me look washed out and shapeless. Later that night, Mom pulled me aside and asked me to tone down my appearance for the wedding, suggesting I wear my hair up and use minimal makeup so I wouldn't naturally draw attention. I agreed, thinking it was a small price to pay for family harmony. I should have listened to Eric when he told me this wasn't normal. He saw the manipulation I was blind to. The bachelorette party only proved him right when I overheard Ashley and Mom on a balcony lamenting how my hair would steal the spotlight. They spoke about me as if I were an obstacle to be managed rather than a daughter and a sister. 2 nights before the wedding, at the rehearsal dinner, the final fuse was lit. The best man, Ryan, gave a clumsy toast where he mentioned that when Trevor first saw Ashley at the work event, he had actually commented on how pretty her sister was. The room went cold. I tried to save the moment by standing up and turning it into a compliment for Ashley, but the damage was done. Later, Ashley cornered me, her voice dripping with venom, accusing me of trying to steal her husband and her life. I went home that night exhausted, taking a mild sleep aid to escape the stress. I fell into a deep sleep in my childhood bedroom, unaware that my parents were waiting in the shadows. I didn't feel the scissors. I didn't hear the snip of the blades. I only woke up to find my identity discarded in the trash and my family standing over me, convinced they had done the right thing. My father remained a stone statue in the doorway, his arms crossed tightly over his chest as if his physical presence could force me into submission. He called me childish, reminding me that the wedding was tomorrow and that I had responsibilities to uphold. Eric stepped forward then, his voice dropping to a dangerously quiet register, threatening to call the police and report the assault if they didn't move immediately. That threat finally broke the stalemate. We left, but not before my mother's voice trailed after me, wailing that I was breaking my sister's heart and selfishly ruining the most important day of her life. As Eric drove me toward his apartment, my phone became a relentless weapon, buzzing with a barrage of texts and calls from my family. I finally turned it off, unable to stomach any more of their twisted logic. The violation I felt wasn't just physical, it was the sickening realization that the people who were supposed to be my protectors had conspired to harm me for the sake of wedding photos. They had decided that my bodily autonomy was secondary to Ashley's insecurities. For the first time, I saw clearly what Eric had been trying to tell me. This wasn't love. This was a toxic, manipulative environment where I was expected to sacrifice my dignity at the altar of Ashley's ego. Eric's apartment became my sanctuary. I sat numbly on his couch while he made tea, still trying to process the jagged ends of my hair. Whenever I caught my reflection in the dark screen of the television, I barely recognized the woman looking back. Something in my eyes had shifted. Eric sat beside me, his voice firm as he reminded me that what they did was legally assault and that we could press charges. While the idea of a legal battle felt overwhelming, I knew one thing for certain: I could never go back to pretending our family dynamic was okay. An hour later, my friend Zoe arrived with her professional hair kit. Her eyes widened in genuine horror when she saw the damage. She whispered that it looked like someone had used garden shears on me. When I told her my parents did it while I was sleeping to keep me from outshining my sister, her jaw dropped. She immediately agreed with Eric that it was a criminal act. I asked her if she could fix it, and she placed her hands gently on my shoulders, promising to make it look intentional, though she warned me that a pixie cut was the only option left. While Zoe worked, evening out the ruins of my auburn hair, I finally answered a call from Ashley and put it on speaker. She demanded to know where I was, dismissing the assault as a minor inconvenience. She told me they would just buy me a wig and no one would notice. Her casual dismissal of my pain only strengthened my resolve. I told her this wasn't about the photos, it was about the fact that my family had violated me while I was unconscious. Ashley snapped, dropping all pretense of sympathy and calling me selfish. She ranted about how hard it was to be the plain sister, the one boys looked past to get to me. She told me that if I didn't show up tomorrow, I was never welcome home again. To my surprise, that threat felt like a relief. The realization settled heavily in my chest that Ashley hadn't just allowed this to happen, she had instigated it. My phone lit up again with a call from my father. He used his sternest voice, ordering me to stop my childish behavior and come home because my mother and sister were in tears. He insisted they did what they had to do because Ashley deserved one day to be the star. When I refused, he moved to financial threats, telling me not to expect any help with my condo down payment or any future support. It clarified everything. Their love was conditional on my compliance. I calmly said goodbye and hung up. Zoe and Eric's support washed over me like a healing balm. They showed me what real love looked like: respect, protection, and righteous anger on my behalf. I decided right then that I wouldn't be bullied into the wedding, but I also wouldn't let them paint me as the villain. I was going to take control of the narrative. I told Eric and Zoe I had a plan, not a vengeful scheme, but a way to reclaim my power. As Zoe finished my hair, I looked in the mirror. The short pixie cut emphasized my cheekbones and eyes in a way my long hair never had. It looked edgy, sophisticated, and intentional. The next morning, Zoe returned to style it with texturizing paste, declaring it a victory. Eric took professional-looking photos of me, capturing a look of defiance and confidence rather than victimhood. I decided we were going shopping. At Nordstrom, I skipped the bridesmaid dresses and went straight to the designer suits. I found a tailored ivory women's tuxedo with slim-cut pants and a fitted jacket. It was modern and powerful. Wearing it, I no longer felt like the compliant daughter. I felt like someone with boundaries. I reached out to a childhood friend, Rebecca, who suggested her cousin, a journalist, might want to write a piece on family boundaries. I told her I'd think about it after the wedding. Next, I called Trevor's parents. I wanted them to hear the truth from me before the rumors started. Mrs. Kennedy's horrified gasps confirmed that my family's behavior was far from normal. She validated my pain, and for the first time, I felt truly heard. I also contacted my photographer friend, Jason, asking him to come to the wedding to capture candid moments and keep an honest record of the day, just in case my family tried to twist the story later. Despite the manipulative texts from my mother and the raging voicemails from my father, I focused on a final gesture. I had previously commissioned a custom watercolor of the wedding venue as a gift. I wrote a simple, firm card to Ashley and Trevor, wishing them a marriage built on mutual respect and healthy boundaries. When Ashley texted me saying our mother had bought a wig and that I should show up to the rehearsal brunch and pretend nothing happened, I simply replied that I would be there. I wasn't going to wear a wig and I wasn't going to pretend. I was going on my own terms. That night, I wrote a long letter to Ashley, explaining that her insecurities did not justify cruelty and that I would no longer allow her to treat me as less than. I posted the photos of my new haircut to social media with a caption about new beginnings. The outpouring of love and compliments from friends transformed the intended humiliation into empowerment. As I drifted off to sleep in Eric's arms, I felt a profound sense of calm. My family had tried to dim my light to make Ashley look brighter, but they had inadvertently helped me find a strength that couldn't be cut away. The morning of the wedding, I woke up centered and determined. I dressed in my ivory suit, applied bold makeup, and stood before the mirror. The woman looking back was no longer a victim. She was a declaration of independence. Eric stood in the doorway, looking at me with pride, and I knew that today was the first day of the rest of my life. Standing before the mirror in the ivory tuxedo, I realized that this look was who I was meant to be all along. We arrived at the historic stone mansion 40 minutes before the scheduled brunch. I had made a promise to help with the final details weeks ago, and despite the trauma of the previous night, I was a person of my word. I chose to show up with integrity, even if my family had none. The wedding coordinator rushed toward me the moment I stepped onto the terrace, her face a mask of panic. She begged for help, explaining that the florist had delivered blush roses instead of the requested dusty rose, and Ashley was currently having a full-scale meltdown in the bridal suite. I took a deep breath and told her I would handle it. I spent the next half hour working with the centerpieces. By adding fresh eucalyptus and greenery from the garden arrangements, I made the blush roses look intentional and organic. As I worked, staff and early guests began to arrive, many stopping in their tracks when they saw me. Trevor's Aunt Martha approached me with wide eyes, telling me the short hair was absolutely adorable. I thanked her with a genuine smile, telling her it was simply time for a change. I had just finished the last arrangement when Ashley walked into the garden, flanked by our parents and Trevor's family. The air seemed to leave the room. Ashley froze, her face twisting through shock and fury. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, and my father's eyes narrowed into an ominous glare. Trevor looked purely puzzled. Ashley hissed at me, demanding to know where the wig was. I told her calmly that I had decided not to wear one and that this was my new reality. She immediately accused me of trying to sabotage her day, claiming I had cut it even shorter just to make a scene. When Mrs. Kennedy stepped in to ask if everything was all right, she commented that I looked lovely and elegant. My mother interjected, pulling Ashley to her side and claiming that I was just trying to steal the spotlight. The absurdity of the moment was highlighted when Trevor asked why a haircut would steal anyone's spotlight. My father tried to pull me away for a private talk, but I stood my ground. I told him there was nothing left to discuss and that I was there to celebrate, looking exactly as I was. My mother insisted I either put on the wig or leave. Trevor, listening intently, finally asked if they were truly demanding I wear a wig just because they didn't like my hair. Ashley tried to pivot, claiming it was about the look of the photos, but the damage was done. In a fit of rage, she snapped that I was no longer the maid of honor and promoted her friend Jessica on the spot. Mrs. Kennedy finally spoke up, telling Trevor that I had called her the night before. She revealed the truth to the entire group, that my parents had drugged me and cut my hair while I was unconscious. Trevor's face shifted to pure disbelief. He asked Ashley if she knew, and her guilty hesitation gave her away. The coordinator tried to settle everyone for brunch, but the internal collapse of the wedding party was already underway. Trevor pulled away from the group to talk to his father, while Jessica and Tara came to my side. They were horrified, telling me that what my parents did was messed up and that my new look was actually stunning. Throughout the brunch, I remained dignified. Every compliment I received from a guest felt like a small victory over the humiliation my family had planned. Jason, my photographer friend, moved through the crowd, capturing the truth of the day, the forced smiles of my parents, and the growing distance between Trevor and Ashley. The ceremony itself was heavy with tension. Sitting with Eric, I watched Trevor hesitate before his vows. At the reception, I handed Ashley the watercolor painting of the venue and the private letter I had written. When it was my turn to give a toast, I spoke about how true love is about supporting growth, not about possession or control. Trevor met my eyes, his expression intense and unreadable. As the night went on, I told the truth to anyone who asked. I didn't exaggerate, I simply stated that my parents had cut my hair in my sleep to make Ashley feel more comfortable. The gasps of the guests were all the validation I needed. Trevor spent most of the night talking to his parents rather than his new bride. When it came time for the bouquet toss, Ashley threw the flowers directly at my face with a look of pure hatred. I caught them reflexively, handed them to a younger cousin, and told Eric it was time to leave. We had accomplished what we came for. The truth had been seen. 3 days later, while Ashley was supposed to be on her honeymoon, a local feature story was published about family boundaries and the violation of bodily autonomy. While names weren't used, the details were clear. I hadn't sought the press, but I didn't hide from it either. The story went viral, sparking a massive conversation about toxic family dynamics. Then I got a call from Trevor's mother. She revealed that Trevor and Ashley weren't in Barbados. Trevor was staying with his parents, questioning if he could remain married to someone who would treat their own sister that way. The fallout with my parents was explosive. They sent voicemails threatening to disown me and cut me out of the will, but those threats no longer had power over me. I forwarded them to my new therapist and moved on. 2 weeks later, I moved in with Eric. My short hair became my signature look, and for the first time in my life, I felt light. I started a new normal of weekly therapy and firm boundaries. 3 months later, a letter arrived from Ashley. She was in therapy, a condition Trevor set for working on the marriage. She admitted to her lifelong jealousy and, for the first time, acknowledged the insecurity that drove her. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was a beginning. I told her I was open to a relationship, but only one based on mutual respect. My parents were slower to change, only agreeing to family therapy after months of limited contact. They had to be told by a professional that what they did was assault, a word they struggled to accept. A year later, my life is unrecognizable. Eric and I are engaged, and my career is flourishing. I have a relationship with my sister that exists on my terms, and I keep my parents at a distance that feels safe. My hair has grown into a chic bob, a daily symbol of the fact that I survived. I learned that true love doesn't require you to shrink yourself. By trying to make me invisible, my family gave me the strength to finally be seen. To anyone facing similar dynamics, you deserve your own autonomy. Setting boundaries isn't a betrayal, it is an act of survival. Thanks for watching.